Good evening, everyone. In a stroke of what we will consider luck, at least for me, any internet issues I had started before stream, and therefore I am now in training mode. This is Rillian, broadcasting from Rillian2_MK, 2 and 4, Team 2_MK, therefore broadcasting to the main 2_MK channel, with full permission, of course. So, Blanka's coming. And Blanka's a charge character, which means that it's relatively easy to get the very basics of getting bot to do moves. You'd think that it would spend a lot of time making sure that the bot has to do specific things, but really it's not that hard. You just hold down back at the end of any given thing and then press forward or up to do something else. The complexity of this is based in some other stuff that Blanka has, and therefore I had to look at those first. So I definitely have Blanka's moves available. Data is right in front of me. You can see it on the Capcom site, namely specifically game.capcom.com/cfn/sf5. From there you should be able to navigate to other things, but if you want the full link, it's just character/Blanka/move list, and you do have to log in, so you have to have a CFN account to go on and see this. That said, I'm sure you've watched the showcase if you are hyped for Blanka in the first place, and if you're not that hyped for Blanka, you probably should take a couple looks at it anyway, but you can learn a bit about this character just by listening to me attempt to come up with ways for this to work. So, the main things that make Blanka unique are things that don't map particularly well onto any other character at the moment. I'm going to be using Nikali to show the techniques and the most likely inputs for the Blanka bot if you want to not necessarily wait until next week to get it. But remember, of course, that with all our bots, certain things are going to change as we go forward. So let's look at a basic concept of how this works for those of you who are not as familiar. I'm going to be recording over my Nikali bot since it doesn't really do anything in particular. Hold down back and end the recording there. I'm still holding down back when I press the button to end the recording and everything. And the second recording will be a forward, let's go with medium punch. I could probably just record that without doing anything else in particular, but fortunately for charge characters, the ability to do that, what I just did, and specifically get the forward and the medium punch on the exact same frame, doesn't tend to be as required. We might see some need for this for Blanka, but it's not likely. The easiest way to do it is to do that, to attempt to hit the button first, and then the direction after, and wait until your brain corrects it to work properly. Some people have the lag mentally in another direction, and therefore it doesn't come up. You can test how it works out for you. But again, for this type of bot, it's not usually necessary to have them go specifically together. And there may be some moments where we actually might need to make sure it doesn't. But I haven't seen any indications of that just yet. And we might be able to get some good stuff out of it regardless. So for now, I'll just turn those on and show you what generally should happen as a result of them. Nikali should either crouch for a really long time because it will stay on action 1, and then whenever it changes from 1 to 2, he'll do this. He'll do that move that this segment takes its name from. This guidance. So if you watch the inputs, it's just down back charge, immediate forward medium punch. And the way this works, and the reason it's useful if you aren't familiar with bots, is that you can't really be sure how long he's going to do that. He could stay at 1 for a very long time. Or he could sometimes, depending on how long you charge the one. And I'll demonstrate that as well. I basically gave him insufficient time to do a charge, right? This means that he'll spend more time hitting the stand medium punch. And only when it comes to the situation where he plays one into itself for a relatively long time will he ever do that. Whereas before he had a much higher chance of it. Now if he goes from 1 to 2, there's insufficient time. Even if I think 1 stays in for a little bit longer to play itself twice, he still probably doesn't do this guidance off of that. He probably needs to choose action 1 3 times in a row to build up enough charge to actually do anything else. Pay attention to this when you're actually doing stuff, because it's going to be important for Blanka, but not super important. There will definitely be some interactions where you care. So, the other thing we know that Blanka needs to be able to use and vary is his V-skill. Necalli does not need this. Necalli is probably not going to be a particularly good bot to test it on, in fact. But I should still put in something. So for Blanka, it is implying that if you do things, if you do his coward crouch, his V-skill, the direction isn't going to matter. And what you probably need to do is have him go into a punch or kick directly afterward. Interesting. And there's one more implication, that it might need to be a neutral kick, but probably not. So let's give a recording. I think I overwrote 2, but we'll see. No, 3's in there, and good. He'll just hit it. That's fine. Let's try something slightly more meaningful. Since Blanka is not a character where you care, that's going to be relatively easy to do in particular ways. Because when you are hitting a button on an action recording, it just starts the recording. So I can hold the button and still end the recording there. This has some uses that are not very clear. Blanka has the ability to move forward or backward by using his triple kick. He can do this during his coward crouch, which is the V skill that he will be activating. So for Necalli, that generally just activates a heavy kick, or if you plink it, you might get a different button, depending on the speed of your plink. It's easier if you have a triple button for this. The game will let you get away with this for specials. Like, just take the plink and it'll give you the ES anyway. It doesn't care about the fact that you hit the button a little early. But Blanka might care. And we're going to try to get rid of that potential when we're going forward. Because his ability to move forward and backward using that input is going to be important to a lot of his mix-ups. Therefore, most likely we'll just use a button for it. Since this doesn't require him to do his V-skill, we have a couple options. If we hold the V-skill button at the end of a recording, what will actually happen is that if you hit triple, let's try that. I'll hold the V-skill button and then hit triple kick. Note that only 2 kicks actually come out. As long as I'm holding the button, the game considers me able to only hit 2 of them. This may be able to help us with some mix-up stuff, or just increase the number of things we can have Blanka do. because he has a jump that comes from that into kick. Therefore, I'm going to assume that if I'm holding the medium kick down the whole time, he won't actually do the coward crouch surprise attack, as it's called, surprise forward or surprise back. He'll just jump, which is possibly useful. I can have it so that he has an action that starts with the triple kick, either forward or backward, but when it plays from a specific form of his V skill, he won't always do the coward crouch. I can vary whether or not he actually does the coward crouch or the raid jump, depending on whether or not I held the button at the end of the V skill. So it would be a good idea to have potentially two different things with the V skill ender, one where I hold it and one where I tap it. And to demonstrate that, let's try this, for those who are not completely clear on what I'm talking about. I think it is 5 that I just recorded. Oh, I don't need 2 on. Turn these off. So 3 is V skill held. So if you see that 3 goes into itself, for example, let's turn off the others and demonstrate this. If 3 goes into itself, he'll just do it once. He'll just be treated as if he's holding down the buttons after having hit them the whole time and will never actually do another V skill. If I turn on 5, which should have been just a tap, not only will he do it whenever he goes from 5 to 3, if he kept on doing 5, he'll keep on doing it, which is the contrast. This is a basic thing for those of you who aren't familiar with how this sort of input timing with bots work and haven't had time to watch a bunch of other content from us on how that's done. So, based on that, let's mess with Action 4. Necalli is useful for a lot of this because Necalli has very similar input commands to Blanka, please note. Not all of them, but enough that I can get somewhere. So, the idea is that if I record a triple kick, a forward triple kick, and I manage to do it on the first frame, which is the hard part, but apparently I have either managed or barely failed. Let's see what I get. In fact, it might even be a better demonstration that I failed it in the way that causes a plink. So we're turning on 3, 4, and 5, and we're going to see some behaviors here. There you go. So if 3 is happening and then 4 happens, what happens is that the game, as far as it's concerned, I did hit the medium kick on the first frame. Even if I didn't hit all 3 kicks on the first frame, the medium kick was definitely hit on the first frame. And since a plink is something that happens because the game is helping you with the inputs, I never hit that medium kick twice. It's just allowing it to be registered as if I hit it twice. Which means, as far as the game is concerned, I held down that medium kick from the time you see the first medium kick forward until the end when you see the triple kick. And that means when action 3 happens and plays into action 4, that's what you'll get. There is no longer a medium kick visible. When action 5 does it, however, you do see the little medium kick, and it does plink, so it treats it as a standing medium kick. So just from that you can see that I've created a bot that does 3 different moves from 3 different actions, but they're relatively random. He can just stand there, or he can do that kick. And finally, he has the Berserker mode where he's basically just hitting buttons. So hopefully that's all clear. And if you understand how Blanka's V-skill works, you understand that if you want to make your own bot, you want to test this out, you want to mess with it and try to get used to his various stuff, all you really care about is that you are holding the V-skill button at the end of some recording. It doesn't matter what comes before that, unless of course the animation is hiding something. But overall, let's look at some other behaviors of bots in general. And I'll turn all of these off so that we can start over. Now, generally, if I charge back and then do forward V-skill, I will get the V-skill. I won't get a move. So here's an advanced technique for doing stuff like that. I'm going to hit forward V-skill. And here I'm going to charge back, but I'm going to charge back after I've held down the medium kick button. So I'm going to medium kick and then hold down back, and while holding them both, end the recording. This is another concept you can use for this. So while action 2 is playing by itself, if I got it right, you'll notice that generally you never see any actual medium kick by itself. This is because I held the medium kick, so when it goes from action 2 to action 2, just as before, you never see it again. And I'll demonstrate that by turning on just that action. In fact, even when you go between these, I believe that is how it generally works. You don't even see it come on again. But just for the sake of being clear, and that input is a little bit dirtier, but you still see the same problem occur. If I think if I put it so that he has one moment before he actually does it, you might see the kick. There we go. If I turn it off though, the fact that the game thinks the button is held down when I unpause means it just keeps like going like that. So as far as it's concerned, he's never hit this kick. I'm just holding the button down this entire time. Why is this useful? Because if I am able to get this done perfectly, which is generally difficult, that's totally not what I was supposed to press. There we go. If I turn these on, now look what I get. Why do I get this? I get this because even though I hit V-skill, the fact that I was holding the medium kick during the charge means that the game can never register that I actually hit V-skill. You can't hold down medium punch and hit the V-skill button if you have a V-skill button set. It'll just come out as medium kick. And similarly, as in this case, if you hold down medium kick and press it, it will only register that you actually hit a medium punch. There's a lot of tricks that you can do with this with tap and other moves that involve holding buttons. So what this means is, if I need extra options as to how to hold down this V-skill while still having Blanka, or in this case Nakali, do certain moves, I have this option. This also applies to your V-trigger, and you can get really creative with it. V-trigger, throw, anything that involves pressing two buttons, you can disable it if you don't want it to happen too often by holding one of those buttons until the end of a different recording. And that will cause a shift. So let's turn back on, which one? I believe action 3 just will demonstrate at least a couple things. So action 3 now has a medium punch that happens randomly by itself. We have this guidance if we have enough charge from action 2. Action 3 never goes into anything from action 2 because action 3 is considered to be holding the V skill button the whole time. So because there's so many things that went, okay, you've been holding this button. Everything is, as far as everything else is concerned, I've held down the medium kick button the entire time. So therefore this bot will never show a medium kick input, as far as I know, because it just considers the button to always be held down. Greatly useful for bots such as Botser/Balrog, but not really useful for Blanka specifically in terms of charging up anything. That's not why we want this. We want this because Blanka has one move like this and a bunch of directional control stuff with his rolling cannon and ground shave rolling V trigger stuff. But let's look for the things that we really need. Now we'll move into actually looking at Blanka bot concepts through Nikali, who will probably not do as well with actually demonstrating most of the stuff, but we might get something. So we know that we need a down back charge to unlock his 3 potential moves. Something has to give us straight up down back. And we know that you cannot do surprise forward, his triple kick style move, and still hold that down back charge. In fact, Blanka doesn't appear to have any specific moves that really benefit from you holding back for a while. One thing we do know about the character though is that his back medium punch is a good long range button, and that his crouching heavy punch, the down back version, is also a good button. So let's see what Nikali has that looks anything like that. Well, the range isn't so great, but it looks approximately similar. That looks good for me. Especially if I don't want him to activate everything all the time. I can make some work with this button. Especially if I hold it down. So I'm going to try starting this one this way. And if I've done it right, clearly I haven't. Normally, for people who play on pad, I have no real suggestions for stick. You have to talk to OmniRapid about that. But for people who play on pad, it's easiest to just move the button you want to a different place where you, usually one of the trigger buttons, where you don't have to worry about this. Let's see if I manage this time. Nope. Which is actually interesting because, oh, no, even then. Okay, well, it's making the point for me. Move the button. So since it's fairly easy to hold down R1, I'll change it to R1, or R2 in this case. So we're recording this while holding down a trigger button. And that looks like I got something else first. There we go. So presuming it's not broken, I guess it's broken somehow. That I'm very interested in investigating. Does it work differently for other buttons? No, there we go. I do have to remember whether or not there's a specific behavior in terms of the sensitivity of that button. Therefore, I suggest, until I have an explanation for that, If you find yourself having the same problem I just did, use R1 or L1 instead of R2 or L2. Especially since when you start doing more complex recordings, it's generally a little easier on the hands. But for now, let's start at that principle. Just down bat heavy punch. And what we clearly need is forward moving stuff. Now, Blanka has an overhead, Rock Crusher, which is a forward plus medium. And as I mentioned before, it's useful for him to have a back plus medium. But in this case, time to switch buttons back. Or maybe not yet, because I'm just going to record things with medium punch anyway. This is not a move for Nikali, but it is a move for Blanka. Down forward heavy punch is also a move for Nikali. It's a chargeable move for Nikali, in fact. So it's something to keep in mind. It switches around the overhead concept versus the other thing I was trying to do, but it's still there. So, we know that this input is also required to do at least some things. That little slide that Blanka has that you have to keep in mind, definitely relevant. But what does that give us in terms of anything else? Well, he doesn't have any specific things that overlap with this. There are no inputs Blanka has that immediately make me think I can do something with this input. Except one specific thing. If you have the skill to do, or by accident, because it happens often by accident as well, to do down forward heavy punch after pressing forward for a fraction of a second, what will usually happen is this. Now, if I were to get that perfect, and you're aware of it if you've ever tried to input our Fangbot, if I tried to get that perfect, it wouldn't work. If I just hit down forward, he would never have actually done the disc guidance. The forward has to be registered cleanly as a forward input. But, as mentioned before, it doesn't actually need to have the punch on that frame in order for the move to work. There's some leniency. So, to our fortune, we could have Blanka use his heavy roll. Do we want Blanka to use his heavy roll? That's a different question. What we might want, though, is for Blanka to use his EX roll. And hopefully he doesn't have a whole bunch of different EX rolls. So let's change that. Let's change that so that instead of just down forward heavy punch, I'm actually doing down forward heavy and light punch. That is plinked, I think, and incorrect. That looks cleaner. The plink is usually almost always okay, but it depends on the level of input skill you have. Because if you do the plink incorrectly, it will stop certain things from happening. So let's see what I've got. What I need is this. Technically what I need is for that to be down forward at the time I hit it. Like that. And I need that to be fast enough to be plinked. If I'm not going to set a button. I could always set a button. It would simplify a lot of things here. So, based on that, I see that I've got something that could probably use a triple punch input and still be useful. Does Blanka have anything that I use with a triple punch? It looks like his V reversal actually is a triple punch. So let's try that. So once again, I'm changing a button. Something simple. And usually you can just switch those to face buttons because you generally don't have any reason you want to hold a triple button at any point of an input. So it's fine. So now I can focus on getting that right in terms of making sure that that is spaced correctly. Now, will this give me what I want? When it's two playing by itself, it does. Now, as you can see, the problem here is the rules for plinking EX moves are not the same. So now, action 1 and 2 are on. We know that he can do this guidance. So why doesn't he do this guidance? Because you can clearly see if I do back charge into this, here, physically, no problem, every time. And it can't be that I was holding the heavy punch in the wrong way, because that would just cause him to do EX disc guidance with 2 buttons, right? And now we see it. Why is it working now? Because the way that the game calculates a plink, I don't actually even know it, but I know that it causes this sort of effect. We should probably ask Capcom why it does that. But just understand that to get this particular type of input can be very hard because of this. And you will also see it on Foundbot, who requests that you do EX Sotocha, and yet it becomes harder and harder as you try to get the EX rather than just the heavy punch. So, for now, we're still going to give it a try, because Blanka might have a good purpose for his EX roll. So that was probably too slow. That was probably fine. So we're going to give it a little bit and see what it gives us. This also has to do with the interaction of certain types of command normals and the game checking for the command normal versus something else and a bunch of other stuff. So, hopefully, the problem doesn't come up on Blanka at all, but be aware that it can happen, and it can be difficult to input him because of this. It will be on the page, but if you're messing with him yourself and want to figure this out, you might find into some problems here. Therefore, in a way, the easier answer is to bypass all of that and do the opposite to solve the problem. Namely, specifically what I was mentioning before. Rather than put yourself up against whatever unknown system it is that controls that in the game, your better option is probably to try to plink it naturally. Namely, by hitting the triple punch yourself. The problem with this is whether or not you plink in a certain way, because in order for the plink to work properly, you would have to make sure that the first button you hit is the heavy punch one. So In a way, I'm basically hoping that Blanka does not need his EX roll because I don't really want to be asking people to do this. But it's relatively easier to ask for that because you'll eventually manage to do that just by fluke, probably. And again, as I said, this has a lot more to do with the way that the characters' buttons are meant in the game and the system that they use for identifying what was supposed to happen. Input leniency is a calculation. And that calculation can sometimes somewhat betray you. For example, it could be that I'm technically wasting time because for whatever reason, Nikali is just actually incapable of that. But once again, note that if you are doing the recording yourself, the specifics of it get really different and sometimes really difficult. So, I'm going to hope it's not relevant, and you're unlikely to see it come up a lot for us, but I will definitely suggest that if you are going to try this, because as you can see there is a way to make it work, it's just relatively difficult execution. Most likely the perfect version will have this in it, and the acceptable version will just be something else. Because it's so tempting to do far too much motion. This is why I'm getting the jumps here. Because it's just relatively difficult to pull off. The other option obviously is that we will use it so that it's not combined with that. And he has two different inputs and we're fine with it. Because what's probably happening, based on the input leniency, is that this doesn't do EX, even if you have hit this together. Or there's some spacing or timing that messes it up. Obviously we'll do some investigation, but if you've ever experienced it, keep it in mind, because this is going to affect everything you try to do with Blanka that involves any forward motion stuff or down forward stuff. Fortunately, he only has one down forward move, and we're not going to stress out about it. So now we're moving into the meat of it. Blanka has a couple of core principle stuff that should probably be in here. He has the overhead, which we probably could leave out if we needed to, but don't really need to leave out because it is just a forward medium punch and it should give you medium roll, which is fine. He has the Amazon River Run, which is the down forward heavy punch that I was just demonstrating that we might have some problems with. He has a triple punch version of his V reversal, allowing for EX roll with punches with no problems. And his special moves are relatively easy because there are either, you're basically going to do either forward and kick or up and kick or forward and punch as mentioned before. The last thing he has is a command throw with punch. The good thing about command throw stuff is that you don't usually tend to care too much. For example, in Akali's case, it's a kick, but I think we can probably get away with this either way. What I'm getting away with here is specifically this. So for Nikali, that has no meaning. For Blanka by itself, that also has no meaning. But as soon as I add a kick somewhere, and in this case, let's turn on action 3 and record it in one shot. If I add a forward kick there, something will happen. And Blanka's target combo is like that. It's exactly the same as Nikali's. Useful. So now I've got action 3 and 5 together should do something. And there we go. And by our fortune, we have the emergent property that he'll just do super. So there's probably not that much work that has to happen there either. You could just put in a lot of this stuff automatically and you get what you wanted. So this is the basic principles for if you want to make your own bot. You need one down back motion charge. You can hold A button, probably medium kick, to make it easiest. And hit the medium kick fairly early on, probably. Whatever button Blanka has that actually combos into roll would probably be your best option though. Especially if you have other down back charges somewhere at the end of something else, he'll be able to get like half the charge before hitting the button, the other half of the charge after hitting the button, then go into something else and combo. That sort of thing works out really well. Then you drop in a V skill somewhere and possibly hold it to the end, don't really have to. And in that case, you've probably got everything exactly as you wanted. The triple kick is going to be the hardest thing to work in here somewhere. We don't want him hopping all around the place, so we're going to have to cut him off from doing that somehow. And the only really good way to do that is to hold the medium kick input at the beginning of whatever. It basically means that I have to do this one with the medium kick held. Which might not be the easiest thing to get your mind to do. But it's still probably good. Fortunately, that won't take away his target combo entirely. What that will actually do is that if you replay it with another thing, sometimes he'll do it and sometimes he won't. Good stuff. Now, in Blanka's case, he has a third hit to that target combo that is a heavy punch. But we've already got a heavy punch. So if we got action 5 into action 1, while Nikali doesn't do anything because target combos have a different cancel system, Blanka would have totally done his target combo there, which is good. Especially if the target combo has a specific way of working that we can work into after that heavy punch. Or if it combos into roll, it might even be useful then. It might not be enough, but it certainly could do something. The other useful thing, which is not as clear, and maybe not as useful, is the fact that whenever a character has a command normal, but also has their V trigger, in the case of a character whose V trigger doesn't have another thing that it does when you hit the button, you actually keep on getting your stuff. But, even more importantly, as demonstrated, I believe with, I actually don't remember which bot demonstrates this now. But, if you are in a target combo, oh, Ibuki. If you're in a target combo, you have an option to do something like this. Let me see which one of these I need the least. You are the target combo, so let's leave you alone. That's interesting. Maybe I recorded over both. I did. That simplifies things because I can just get rid of action 3. What I'm going to try to do here is hit medium kick and then hit V trigger. But if I activate Necalli's V trigger already, I don't think that he then goes from this into cancels. He does now have something he does when you hit that button in neutral. But if you hit the same button in a target combo, it'll just pick whichever one will continue the target combo. And this works in both cases. So for Blanka, you could literally hit V trigger twice and he'd probably do his whole target combo. Unless he has the ability to cancel out of the middle of his target combo into his ground shave rolling, you can be pretty sure he's going to manage this well. This has a lot of uses because it allows us to put in his target combo and hold that button. It also allows us to start off something by holding the button and know that if we record the target combo like this and actually just tap it, what should happen in Blanka's case is that he will do medium kick, heavy kick, or medium kick V trigger cancel, depending on if he's already in V trigger. So he will do medium kick, heavy kick, and if he happens to go into the other one where we held down this, and it's the only thing we did, he'll actually finish the target combo. But when he's not in that state, that will allow him to charge up his ground shave rolling. And depending on how long we held the button, he might get some relatively long charge. In fact, if we hold it right until the end, we've created the full charge up capacity, similar to Jury. He could, if we put it in action 1, let's say, go from action 1 into action 1 and build up the entire ground shave rolling to full guard break potential. He just won't do it often. While still having his target combo, having cancels out of his target combo, and being able to V reversal, probably, and depending on the timing that we used for it, also get his EX roll, all from one input. So that is probably going to be among our main ones for Blanka. I believe we've already technically got that as action 2 or 3 at the moment. If this worked out even better, we would probably be able to get, depending on the leniency, it would just work with that input. We wouldn't have to do anything else. He'll still finish it. Just instead of the triple punch, we would use a triple punch chained into or off of his V trigger button. Because command normals also do this. There's all sorts of weird stuff that come up. So you could hit all of those buttons and Blanka will do whatever he feels like at the moment he happens to do it. So now the job of the bot creator, i.e. me, is to find a way to put all of that together in just 5 inputs as cleanly as possible, and hopefully while having Blanka actually have a good throw. Neither of Blanka's throws is specifically better than the other. His forward throw obviously doesn't allow you to hold a charge easily, but you could go right back into charging and probably be fine right after. Is this a good Blanka game plan? We don't know yet. And this is the part of the bot that's most likely to change, where I put the throw. Also where I put the throw tech, because that's very rhythm based. But in terms of simply having his target combo, fitting that in is not difficult. If I wanted to do it by doing the whole thing as the V skill, for example, it would still work. I could change it based on whether or not you were holding medium punch at the end. And we've already decided that that's a thing he's going to have. He will have at least one input where he's just forward medium punch and holding that medium punch. There's no loss there. If he happens to do that forward medium punch, you could also give him the back medium punch, and the same thing will happen. So now I've got pieces, and those pieces have to go in particular places. For charge characters, you tend to be a lot more restricted. You have to go either forward or backward most of the time, and that means that things must be either at the beginning of the input recording or at the end. A lot of other characters get to hide a lot more stuff in their actions because they're not waiting for a charge to build up. But Blanka and other charge characters don't give this option. So what happens a lot of the time is that you get a little bit restricted in how many regular buttons you can just hit and expect things to happen. But let's start from the beginning, and I'm going to do it coming down Blanka's list of buttons to simplify the whole thing. So we know we want a throw, and a throw is almost always something that goes well at the beginning of an input because we don't want him to do it a lot. And we want to be able to mess with some stuff. So I'm going to record going down, and these you can actually, if you are taking any notes, take notes on. What I want here for input 1 is probably this, forward and throw. And after that forward and throw, I probably want to hit something else. What do I want to hit? What do I want to happen if Blanka whiffs a throw in neutral? What should follow that? Chances are that if Blanka has whiffed a throw in neutral, what I want to do from there is hold either down back or just straight back. Let's go with down back in this case. You can shift it if it suits you for some reason. We are going to do forward throw, holding down back, and pressing a medium punch. And the medium punch can be at nearly any timing because we're going to be lenient. If he whiffs the throw and gets the medium punch to come out, good. If he doesn't get the medium punch to come out, probably also fine. I like lenient inputs, and I'm pretty sure that those who are not too familiar with bots or characters also like them. Now the hard part about this one is that I must let go of throw, but not let go of the medium punch. However, that should be decent. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Forward, throw, but holding onto the medium punch at the end, holding down back at the end. When played back by itself, there's something interesting. If you do this fast enough, the throw input doesn't take priority over the special move. I cannot guarantee you that this will happen for Blanka. It's useful, but I cannot guarantee it will happen for Blanka. And as you can see, with input leniency, if you did it just right, it has the even weirder capacity to unlock his ability to do this. But that is not necessarily useful for Blanka because he doesn't have such moves. It's a really useful thing on certain other characters, and when we eventually make Nakali Bot V2, it's probably going to be really similar to this. Just because you can't jump over him and have that work. But let's not get derailed. You know how often I get derailed. Forward throw, down back medium punch. The medium punch can be with the down back or without it, doesn't really matter. It might help if it's not. Stand medium punch is good. And that's the whole input for now. Until we've thought of a bunch of other things that absolutely need to happen there. We're set. So now we know that we need, from that down back, some other moves. Since we held a medium punch, we have a weird option here. And Akali is probably one of the best characters to demonstrate it. But I'm not going to go to that directly yet. I'm pointing out something related to it. His coward crouch, if I just give him a V-skill, I'm going to hold down bat for the sake of that too. And activate these two. Sometimes he'll do the V-skill, and if I held it correctly, which is in no way guaranteed here, and looking like I did not. If I did the first one right, Akali, you are so weird. Did I change those buttons again? Don't think I did. But let's make sure. Nope. Nothing appears to be wrong there. So either my controller is busted, which I know is not the case in this one, or Akali is just really strange when it comes to these recordings. Because I'm definitely holding that medium punch. And you can actually see that moment where he should just be registering the medium kick and nothing else. But the game does have a weird thing where it is capable of detecting a space in an input that isn't naturally always there. It's a polling thing. And just getting this to work properly is usually difficult. So let me hit it with nothing else. And this is how I normally test this. There you go. You can see now that it seems to be working correctly in this case. He's hitting the medium kick only. And though this will be possibly super hard to do, the good thing is, and I mentioned this before, Blanka's V-skill does not care which direction you pressed when you did it. And Blanka's target combo also doesn't care which direction you press on the medium kick when you do it. So what we are going to want is something a little silly. And that's probably all we want. Whether or not you hold any of those buttons can be changed, and it's probably one of the easiest inputs to change. In fact, to the point where I would prefer to move it to Action 5 just so it's clear. I might do that when I release the bot. But for now, all you really need to know is that you hit V skill, V trigger, and that's all. The reason this is important, in combination with what we've got so far, is this. We have V-skill, we have target combo, we have V-trigger activations, and we have a bunch of normals. The fact that I blinked to the throw probably helps. I might have over-recorded something, but you get the idea overall. Let me see if I did. No, that looks about right. I wonder why it looks like that. No, not you. Now, when you blink these, it's usually fine. we about to get into just my medium kick? Yes, we are. So, now we've got a throw, a medium punch, a medium kick if you happen to be in a particular setup. If you trigger if a particular other thing happens, a target combo if another thing happens. You're fairly set off of just those two. If you didn't understand anything else about Blanka and just wanted to deal with a couple basic stuff, you'd probably already have it. The problem here is obviously that since I didn't hold a charge that long, you're not going to see too much out of it. But that's probably fine for now because we don't specifically need a bunch of things to happen. When Blanka, on the other hand, does his V-skill, he will now have various options that he can go into. He may do V-skill into punch, he may do V-skill into kick, and you're going to have to try for yourself when it comes out what V-skill into V-skill does. Normally this will activate the kick version of a V-skill. But for Blanka, we don't actually know yet. Maybe you can hold on to it and stay down. I know you can definitely hold on to it and stay down, but if you tap it twice, will that cause you to stay down? That sort of thing will be in the final bot, but the concept is the same. What we expect is that if it ignores the V-trigger input, then nothing will happen. If it takes the V-trigger input and treats it as a kick, he will do the raid jump, and wild lift is another option. Hopefully it can be done so fast that it ignores the V-trigger input, and therefore we get some mix-ups and options. The next thing given is V-reversal, which is the forward triple punch. So that would give us an EX roll if we had enough charge. It could also give us the last hit of the target combo. And that's basically all we need to know, really. So sure, let's work with that. There is definitely a forward triple punch useful input here. And now we have to worry about pieces. If we hit forward triple punch, where do we want to go from there? His forward triple punch is normally a V reversal and it's otherwise a roll, and in the last case it's just his stand heavy punch. His stand heavy punch is fairly good, crush counters, leads into some stuff. It might, if we're lucky, lead into his command throw or his EX command throw. So let's attempt to get this triple punch really quick and then go into a full backward. And just to demonstrate what should happen, I'm not actually going to use triple punch, I'm going to use triple kick. Too fast. Getting this clean can take a while, obviously. Because the main thing you're aiming to do is relax on the second half. The forward triple kick doesn't really need to happen that fast. And this part is okay. You can also hit way too many buttons and have that happen. So if I turn that on, what I now have is an EX command grab. And in this case it'll just repeat itself actually, because the forward triple kick is not so slow that the command grab won't come out. If Blanka's command grab is similar, you will get his EX command grab, which is good. And you will get it after a crush counter, because if you use some other inputs and he happens to hit the triple kick by itself, he'll just do the triple kick in neutral probably. This input causes him to have this masked quite a lot because there are a lot of other inputs that eat the command grab. But that's good because you then don't know when to expect the command grab. and you get an EX one. It would also mean that for every quick, heavy, light, or medium punch, in Blanka's case, in Mikali's case, any kick, you will still get that command grab. You'll just get a different version of it if we happen to use any other inputs of that type. So that's really all you need. Just forward triple punch in Blanka's case, relatively quickly, a half circle backward, and end the recording using the options button as if it were the button to execute the attack, which means that the game will effectively substitute the first button of some other input and occasionally give you something good. So we've covered the ability to get Blanka to do his EX roll. Now we need to get backstep rolling. But what's not clear is that if you did it right, and you managed to do a particular input for the V skill, you might already have it. In this case though, we're not going to do that. We're not going to push on that. What we will do instead is just use a standard kick version, because we happen to know that Blanka's light roll is particularly good. And this has a lot of meaningful uses to us. You could also get around this in one other really interesting way, but again, this is for specifics. So we're just going to give him, in Akali's case, we would need to use a punch because that's the move, but a kick is how Blanka will do it. We need something that gives Blanka a light kick to start. Do we see anything at all in Blanka's moveset where this is useful? Where we can get this light kick without making us lose too much stuff? One thing to note is that we already have this, because we had this. And if we have this, and this was on the first frame, which is usually not the case, but if we did have this on the first frame, or plinked on the first frame, or any of those things, as long as we make sure that the punch is pressed down at the end of another input, then that will become a forward kick. Therefore, we can actually save some inputs that way. This is for people who want to make their own version of the bot. You can save inputs by making sure that this is first frame in one of your inputs. Good luck with that, of course. Or plinked in that specific way most of the time. That will work. Actually, I have it the wrong way around. It has to be plinked such that the punch comes first. Fortunately, that input is relatively easy overall, and not necessarily worth updating here, but you can see how it would work. And I'm not going to do it specifically for an Akali here. All it means is that rather than trying to make sure that we have something with a light kick at the start which doesn't necessarily have another use, we can try to use the input from throw to get it. Depending on how much time we have on the stream, I may do that, but let's look at it from the other side. I need to hit a light kick. In Akali's case, I will use a light punch to stand for that. I need to hit a light punch for Akali, and then hold down back again. And then I need to hold it. Very similar to the first input. If you were really creative, you could just make sure you let go of certain buttons at certain times and so on. But let's look for what Blanka can do with his light kick. There must be something. He's got triple kick inputs that we need to work in here somewhere. But wait, maybe we can actually make use of that. Because what if I don't let go of the light kick in that situation? If I hit a triple kick on Blanka and then let go of the other buttons, what happens? The same thing for the punch. If I had held the triple punch the whole time, would that solve my problem? Should I have made the other one so that rather than going into the command grab from that one, I actually just held down everything? And this is where bots tend to get into my deeper work. Because I should probably have been able to hit forward triple punch and hold the triple punch the whole time. And instead of putting the quarter circle back on this one, put the charge on this one. Because I'm already holding buttons. And by holding the buttons in this specific way, I also make it less likely to be a problem. So I can get the EX roll off of one input. The problem with that, of course, is that, again, you really need to set it to some button, probably at the up, probably one of the shoulder buttons, so that you can end the recording. But this is not difficult. That should be okay. Depending on how long I charge, of course. So you see here that because I didn't let go of the button, Nikali just inches forward. He does the action as if he's going to go for something, but he doesn't actually do it. Now conceptually, once again, we're going to get some confusion based on the fact that things we want to do with Blanka and things we want to do with Nikali are different in terms of punches and kicks. But such is the work of life. Now that happens, please note, because you must get it on the first frame in order for it to count the button as being held down the entire time. And that is harder when you have to press the forward to do it. But you can get it right. Given enough time, you can get it. So we're back to this point. And these little things don't matter as much. I'm seeing forward inputs, and that's good enough. So, backtracking now. I generally tend to do this without actually redoing the throw input myself, but I probably shouldn't. Let's reset some buttons. We're recording action 1. with the goal of managing the throw on the first frame. That's a kick. And I did kicks, so I probably am fine there. Except for the fact that I probably didn't hold the medium punch well enough. Either way, here's the purpose. We've got all sorts of weird behaviors now. Why are all these weird behaviors happening? The first reason is because if you manage to hold the throw in particular ways, which is relatively easy in certain setups, but not all, we're seeing light version of this guidance. We are also seeing the forward triple kick. And this is because the light kick in the triple kick is eating the light kick from the beginning of the throw, leaving you with just a forward light punch